Hello and welcome to English II. I'm your online teacher, Miss Abear. We have been looking at Dr. Martin Luther King's speech, his letter from Birmingham Jail. And throughout this unit so far, we are going to be looking at, and in the future, how authors how they use rhetoric and specific word choices to help develop their ideas and refine their claims. And so last night, you guys had some homework, and so we're going to be looking at those paragraphs 6 through 9 today. And so as promised, every time that we get together, I will remind you of your end of unit task. So at the end of this particular unit, you will write a well-developed response to the question, analyze how King develops and refines his claims to advance his purpose. All right, and our agenda for the day is we are going now over the lesson agenda. We are going to do some homework accountability. We will have a masterful reading again of some of these paragraphs. We will have some reading and discussion. There will be some collaborative discussion preparation on your part, and then some additional collaborative discussion. And always a quick write. And then we have our closing, which will also include some homework. So you can see what standards we're addressing on this particular slide. And I do want to draw your attention to a couple of different things. In lesson 1, in that handout for your teachers, there are all of the standards for the unit are listed with space so that you guys can keep up with your accountability for that particular standard. That is an additional task if your teacher in your classroom decides he or she wants to use that tool as well, so that you can know whether or not you are mastering those standards and you can be accountable to yourself for those. The other thing that I neglected to say, and I'm so sorry that I neglected to say this when we met the first time, there is some language that Dr. King uses in his speech that we do not get to use today. It's not appropriate for us to use some of the words that he uses. And so anytime that you are talking about the speech, you are welcome to, anytime you're quoting specifically from the speech, you can use those words because those are the words that he uses. But when you are writing and when you are talking about the speech, you do not get to use those words. It's not okay. Those words are not appropriate in today's language. And so we use other words. One of the phrases that we use to describe the people that Dr. King is working with is African Americans. And you may use that phrase, or you can just call them Americans, because they are. And so I want you to be very cognizant that it is not okay to use that language that's used in the letter yourself. So needed to get that elephant out of the room. So know that when you are talking about the letter, make sure that you are using appropriate words. All right, so let's look, before we go to our homework accountability, there is this argument visual handout that I want you to have, and I hope that your teacher will print this out for your binder. But let's look at kind of defining what all of these different ideas are. An argument is a composition of precise claims about a topic, including relevant and sufficient evidence and valid reasoning. A central claim, an author or speaker's main point about an issue in an argument. What are those supporting claims? Those are smaller, related points that reinforce or advance the central claim. And evidence is the topical and textual facts, events, and ideas in which the claims of an argument arise and which are cited to support these claims. Your reasoning is the logical relationships among ideas, including relationships among claims and relationships across evidence. So hopefully your teacher has printed this out either as a poster in your classroom or as a piece that you can have in your binder throughout this unit, because this will help you understand as you're writing your essays what it needs to look like, but it can also help you understand Dr. King's speech, what his central claim is and what his supporting ideas are, or those supporting claims with his reason and evidence, because he has lots of supporting claims to one central claim for that letter. All right, now it is time for some homework accountability. So I need you to turn and talk and discuss your written response to the Lesson 2 homework prompt. King concludes paragraph 4 with the statement, anyone who lives inside of the United States can never be considered an outsider. How does King develop this idea across paragraph 4? What details does he use to develop the idea? Good job. Let's go over a couple of the things that I heard you guys saying. So one of the things was King begins the paragraph by describing the interrelatedness of all communities and states. He refines this idea with examples of Americans as people caught in an inescapable network and tied in a single garment. Because people are connected, King believes people have a responsibility to protect justice. He writes, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. King further demonstrates that every person has a responsibility to protect justice when he writes, whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. King makes different specific claims in paragraph 4, but each one supports the idea that people are dependent on and responsible for each other. So there are no outsiders in the United States. Okay? So, good job. I love those discussions that you were having. So let's pause those discussions. Get your letter out. Make sure you pull that out because we're going to listen to another masterful reading. We're going to listen to paragraphs 6 through 9. And so that will be 429 through 1119. There is no red text and there are no additional paragraphs in 6 through 9 that you have to kind of weed through, so you're okay there. I'm going to pause while you guys listen to paragraphs 6 through 9. Good job, guys. I saw some of you really making those notes, and I'm really proud of you for continuing those annotations as we go along through this text. All right, now we're going to transition, and I need you with a partner to reread just paragraph 6 and answer the questions that are on your board. Good job. Again, we're not going to go over every single question, but we are going to go over a couple of them. So let's look at what are the 4 basic steps of any nonviolent campaign. You are to annotate the text to indicate those steps. Those 4 basic steps are collecting the facts, negotiation, self-purification, and direct action. Okay? And then what claims does King make about the city and community of Birmingham? He claims that racial injustice engulfs the community and that Birmingham is probably the most thoroughly segregated city in the United States, and that comes from paragraph 6. All right, what evidence does he cite to support these claims? He says he cites specific details about the poor treatment of African Americans in Birmingham to support his claim. For example, police brutality, discrimination in the courts, and bombings of African American homes and churches were worse in Birmingham than anywhere else in the United States. Okay? So you should have those answers written down, at least for those. You should have all of the answers to these questions written down, but those are really important. Now let's talk about a couple of other questions that you need to have before we move on, talking specifically about paragraph 6. Who are the city fathers that he's talking about? The city fathers are Birmingham's political leaders based on the evidence that Negro leaders sought to negotiate with them. And the them is those city fathers, and they look to negotiate with those political leaders. All right? How did African American leaders attempt to work with Birmingham political leaders, and how did political leaders respond? The African American leaders tried to negotiate, but the political leaders consistently refused to engage in good faith negotiation. Okay, the last question, how does King use the description of the city fathers to support his claim about Birmingham? And he uses the description of the city fathers consistently refusing to negotiate to support his claim that racial injustice engulfs Birmingham and to demonstrate the urgent need for direct action. All right? You should have those responses written as well, and all of those responses will help, again, lead you to those writing tasks that we have at the end of every day as well as the end of our unit. So now we are going to work and prepare for a collaborative discussion. And so in this collaborative discussion, you will have a couple of different tools. You will have paragraph 7 and 8 text analysis tool, along with a paragraph 9 text analysis tool. You will work with a partner, and every group will reread paragraphs 7 through 9. Half of the partner groups will complete the paragraph 7 through 8 text analysis tool, while the other half will complete the paragraph 9 text analysis tool. Once complete, you're going to switch partners with someone who completed the opposite text analysis tool and discuss your responses, and then we'll come back together and have a collaborative discussion about all of those responses. All right? So get your text analysis tools and partner up. Good job, guys. All right, so here's how this is going to work. I'm going to put one of the questions on the board, or actually maybe a couple of questions, and then you guys are going to talk about it. So you may have to pause at my video so you guys can discuss. But again, make sure that you're taking really good notes on your text analysis tools, and if you run out of room there, then you write it on notebook paper. But all of these collaborative discussion, this is going to be some good stuff and some good notes for you to keep up with. All right, so let's look at the first couple of questions. Why was direct action necessary in Birmingham? So there was no alternative to direct action because other methods such as negotiation had not worked. Why do members of the nonviolent campaign in Birmingham decide to go through the process of self-purification? Members of the campaign decide to undergo self-purification to prepare for the difficulties involved, which might include being beaten or thrown in jail. They want to be fully prepared to respond to violence and brutality with nonviolence. How does King respond to the call for negotiation? What reasoning does King offer to support his counter-argument? So King agrees with the claim that negotiation is a better path, but he has seen that negotiation does not work in Birmingham without the tension. He supports his reasoning that the community has consistently refused to negotiate. He explains that tension will force the community to talk about the injustices. What words and images does King use to describe the problems of racial injustice? What words and images does he use to describe his hope for the future? To describe the racial injustice, King uses words like bondage and dark depths to create an image of slavery and despair. In contrast, he uses positive words like majestic heights and brotherhood to describe his vision for what a just future could look like. All right, great job. We worked through some of this collaborative discussion. We got through some of the things that we needed to get through, and now it is time for your quick write. So get out a piece of notebook paper, and I want you to answer the question. How do paragraphs 7 through 9 develop a claim that King makes in paragraph 6? Go back to your annotations and your text analysis tool to find evidence. Good job, guys. All right, you always know that when we finish our quick write, we are almost through for the day. So I'm going to give you your homework assignment. This time I want you to write an objective summary of King's letter from paragraphs 1 through 9. Try to use some of the vocabulary from these lessons wherever possible in your response. So an objective summary, don't put your own thoughts in there, not yet. You're not analyzing anything. What does the text say? And just summarize that, all right? Until next time, happy learning.